August 1977, 7 o'clock in the evening. Nobody, not the producers, not the television networks, not the record executives, not the music critics, not even the biggest young superstar, believed Elvis Presley still belonged on that stage. For almost a month, the newspapers had repeated the same headline. The king's time is over. The future has finally arrived. Tonight belongs to the next generation. Millions believed history was about to change. They thought they were coming to witness the passing of a crown. Nobody imagined they were actually coming to witness why some crowns can never be taken. Outside Wembley Stadium, hours before sunrise, the streets were already alive. Thousands of fans, wrapped in blankets, waited outside the gates. Some had driven across England. Others had crossed Europe. Some had flown across the Atlantic Ocean. Many carried old vinyl records. Others held faded concert tickets from years before. One elderly couple sat quietly together. The husband looked at a worn photograph. It showed a much younger version of themselves, standing outside an Elvis concert almost 20 years earlier. His wife smiled. "We were so young." The old man laughed softly, and somehow, so was he. Nearby, a little boy, holding his father's hand, looked toward the enormous stadium. "Dad, was Elvis really that famous?" His father smiled. "No, son. He wasn't famous. He became a part of people's lives." The boy frowned. "I don't understand." His father squeezed his shoulder. "You will. Before tonight is over." Inside the stadium, more than 90,000 seats were completely filled. It looked like an ocean made of people. Camera cranes moved slowly above the crowd. Television commentators prepared their notes. Satellite trucks broadcast to more than 100 countries. One commentator smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, music enters a new era." Another nodded. "One legend, one new superstar, sharing one stage." But let's be honest, the audience came for the future. Neither man realized how wrong those words would soon become. Backstage, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Dancers stretched, musicians tuned instruments, lighting technicians checked thousands of stage lights. Producers smiled proudly. One pointed toward the enormous stage. "This is the most expensive concert production we've ever built." Another laughed. Explosions, lasers, moving platforms, flying cameras. This show will change everything. Across the hallway, behind another dressing room door, everything looked completely different. No dancers, no assistants, no loud music, only silence. Elvis Presley sat alone, still, calm. On a small wooden table rested an old photograph. His mother, Gladys Presley. Beside it lay a simple silver cross and an old guitar pick, its edges worn smooth after years of use. Elvis quietly picked it up, turned it gently between his fingers, then smiled. "I still carry you everywhere." A soft knock interrupted the silence. "Come in." Colonel Tom Parker stepped inside. He looked nervous, much more nervous than Elvis. "You ready?" Elvis smiled. "I've been ready for a long time." Colonel hesitated. "There are some things you should know." Elvis looked up. "The younger star has been doing interviews." Elvis nodded politely. "So?" Colonel sighed. "She told reporters, 'Tonight belongs to her generation.'" Another pause. "And," she said, "it must be difficult for legends to know when to leave." The room became quiet. Colonel waited for anger, for disappointment. Instead, Elvis laughed softly. "My mama used to tell me, if someone has to announce you're finished, it usually means they're hoping you believe them." Colonel smiled. "You always surprise me." Elvis stood slowly, adjusted his legendary white jumpsuit. Thousands of rhinestones sparkled beneath the dressing room lights. The massive eagle covered his chest. His gold belt reflected tiny flashes across the room. He looked toward the mirror, not with pride, with gratitude. "I've never worn this suit for myself." Colonel looked confused. Elvis smiled. "I wear it for everyone who believed a poor boy from Memphis could dream." Outside, the announcer's voice echoed across Wembley Stadium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the brightest new superstar, the future of popular music." The stadium exploded. Fireworks erupted. Flames shot into the night sky. Hundreds of dancers flooded the stage. The young superstar appeared, surrounded by light. The audience screamed. The producers celebrated. One shouted, "This is exactly what we wanted!" Energy, youth, the future. Backstage, the young superstar walked off after her opening performance, breathing heavily, smiling proudly. She noticed Elvis standing quietly near the stage entrance. She smiled politely. "So, the big moment." Elvis nodded. She looked toward the roaring audience. "I've never performed for 90,000 people." Elvis smiled warmly. "I haven't either." She frowned. "You haven't?" Elvis quietly looked across the endless sea of faces, then answered in almost a whisper, "No, I've only ever performed for 90,000 hearts." She looked confused, not understanding what he meant. "Before we continue, I'm curious, where are you watching from today? Tell us your country and city in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes great music never grows old. Your support helps us create more cinematic stories every week. Now, let's return to Wembley Stadium. The stage manager raised his hand. 30 seconds! The fireworks stopped. The dancers disappeared. The giant LED screens turned black. The music faded. The audience waited. One spotlight slowly appeared in the exact center of Wembley Stadium. Elvis closed his eyes, took one deep breath, picked up one microphone, and stepped into the light. For several seconds, he didn't sing. He simply looked at 90,000 faces, then quietly smiled, and the entire stadium became so silent that people could hear the wind moving through the giant Wembley flags. One spotlight, one man, one microphone, nothing else. No fireworks, no dancers, no giant screens, no smoke, no explosions, just Elvis Presley, standing alone in the middle of Wembley Stadium. More than 90,000 people watched him. Nobody screamed. Nobody waved signs. Nobody shouted his name. They simply waited. Backstage, one producer whispered, "This is dangerous." Another nodded. He should have opened with something bigger. People expect a show. The oldest lighting technician quietly smiled. "No," he whispered. "They're about to witness a memory." Elvis slowly looked across the stadium, from the front row to the highest seats near the roof. Families, children, teenagers, grandparents, 3 generations together. He smiled gently, then leaned toward the microphone. "When I was a young man, I thought the loudest applause was success." A pause. But time has a beautiful way of teaching us what really matters. The stadium became even quieter. I spent years trying to make people scream my name, he smiled. But one day, I realized the greatest sound in the world isn't applause. He slowly pointed toward the audience. It's hearing people sing beside you. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. Backstage, the younger superstar folded her arms. She whispered, "He's talking too much." The producer nodded. "The audience wants music." Another old musician, standing nearby, quietly answered, "No, they're already listening to music." Elvis slowly raised one hand. The band prepared themselves. The conductor lifted his baton. Elvis gently smiled, then quietly said, "No orchestra." The conductor froze. "No drums." The drummer lowered his sticks. "No piano." The pianist removed his hands from the keys. "No strings." Every musician looked surprised. One guitarist whispered, "Then what do we play?" Elvis smiled warmly. "Nothing. I want to hear the people." Silence, complete silence. He slowly closed his eyes. Then, without instruments, without backing vocals, without special effects, he sang the very first line. One voice, only one, soft, gentle, almost like a father singing his child to sleep. The first words floated across Wembley Stadium. The audience didn't move, didn't cheer. They listened, completely still. One elderly woman quietly reached for her husband's hand. A young father lifted his daughter onto his shoulders. An old veteran removed his cap. Thousands of phones began disappearing. People slowly lowered their cameras. Nobody wanted to record this moment. They wanted to remember it. Backstage, the younger superstar stopped talking. She quietly removed her in-ear monitors. "I can't hear the band," the sound engineer smiled. "There isn't one." She looked toward the stage. "Then why does it sound so full?" The old engineer answered, "Because 90,000 hearts already know every word The first chorus arrived. One man, near the front row, began singing. Then his wife. Then the family, beside them. Then an entire section. Within moments, the whole stadium joined Elvis, not because the screens told them to, not because a producer asked them, because the song already belonged to them. The sound rose gently, like one giant choir, 90,000 voices, perfectly together, not screaming, not shouting, simply singing. The younger superstar felt chills run down her arms. She whispered, "I've never heard anything like this." An elderly stage technician, standing beside her, smiled. "They aren't singing to Elvis. They're singing with him." Before we continue, I'm curious, where are you watching from today? Tell us your country and city in the comments below. If you're enjoying this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes great music never grows old. Your support helps us continue creating cinematic stories like this every week. Now, let's return to Wembley Stadium. The final chorus filled the night sky. Parents hugged their children. Young couples held each other tightly. Grandparents closed their eyes, remembering the first time they had heard that voice. Even security guards forgot to watch the crowd. Some quietly wiped away tears. One police officer whispered, "My parents danced to this song." The final note echoed across the stadium. Then, silence. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Nobody clapped. Nobody could. They were too overwhelmed. Then, one elderly man near the highest seats slowly stood. He began applauding. Another joined him, then another. Within seconds, the entire stadium rose as one. The applause rolled across Wembley like thunder. It became louder than every firework, louder than every laser, louder than any concert the producers had ever staged. Backstage, the younger superstar could only stare. Tears filled her eyes. She quietly whispered, "They didn't fall in love with the performance." She looked at Elvis. They fell in love with the man. Then, without saying another word, she slowly began walking towards center stage, because for the first time, she realized she hadn't come to replace a legend. She had come to meet one. The applause wouldn't stop. 1 minute passed, then another, then another. Still, more than 90,000 people remained standing. Nobody sat down. Nobody reached for a phone. Nobody spoke. Because somehow, every person inside Wembley Stadium knew they had just witnessed something they would tell their grandchildren about. Elvis quietly lowered the microphone. He didn't bow. He didn't wave. He simply stood with one hand over his heart, thanking the people. Not with words, but with gratitude. The applause only grew louder. Backstage, the younger superstar couldn't move. Her eyes never left the stage. The producer touched her shoulder. "It's your turn." She didn't answer. Another producer checked his watch. "We're already behind schedule." Still, she didn't move. Instead, she quietly removed her glittering jacket, then her expensive custom-made earpiece. She looked toward Elvis. "I can't follow that." The oldest stage technician, standing beside her, smiled. "No," he whispered, "you don't follow legends. You learn from them." She slowly nodded. For the first time that night, she wasn't thinking about awards, charts, streaming numbers, or headlines. She was thinking about one question: what makes a legend? The applause finally softened. Elvis looked toward the audience, then quietly spoke. "You know, when I first started singing, I believed the louder people screamed, the better I must be." A gentle smile. "But life has a funny way of teaching us the truth." He slowly pointed toward the crowd. "The greatest concert isn't the one people remember with their ears. It's the one they remember with their hearts." Silence. Complete silence. The younger superstar felt tears rolling down her face. She whispered, "Nobody ever taught me that." Then, something unexpected happened. She slowly walked onto the stage. Not with confidence, not with choreography, not with dancers, just one person walking toward another. The audience watched quietly. Nobody knew what she planned to do. She stopped, only a few feet from Elvis. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Millions watching live around the world saw one of the biggest stars of her generation searching for words. Finally, she looked into Elvis's eyes. "I'm sorry." The stadium fell completely silent. "I judged you before I knew you." She lowered her head. "I thought this concert was about replacing the past." She smiled sadly. "But standing here, I finally understand. The past built the stage I'm standing on." The audience remained perfectly still. She continued, "I thought I came here to perform with Elvis Presley." Her voice trembled. "But tonight, I realized I'm standing beside history." Elvis looked at her, then smiled, the same gentle smile that had comforted millions. He slowly stepped forward, placed one hand on her shoulder. "My dear, the biggest mistake any artist can make is believing they have to replace someone." He paused. "The world already has one Elvis. It doesn't need another." He smiled warmly. "It needs the very first you." Tears filled her eyes. Elvis slowly removed his famous white concert scarf. The scarf fans had begged to catch for years. The scarf worth thousands to collectors. Without hesitation, he gently placed it around her shoulders. The audience gasped. She looked down at the scarf. "I can't accept this." Elvis laughed softly. "You're not accepting my scarf." He gently adjusted it. "You're accepting a responsibility." She looked confused. Elvis continued, "One day there will be a young singer standing where you are. They'll be nervous, They'll be scared. They'll wonder if they belong. He smiled. When that day comes, don't make them compete with you. Lift them. That's how music lives forever. The younger superstar couldn't hold back her tears. She stepped backward, looked across 90,000 people. Then, without hesitation, she began applauding Elvis, not as a performer, as a student. The musicians immediately followed, then the dancers, then the producers, then the camera crews, then security. Within moments, every single person standing backstage was applauding the man in the white jumpsuit. The audience saw it, and the applause returned again, louder than before. It rolled across Wembley Stadium like thunder. The younger superstar leaned toward Elvis, almost whispering. "I'll never forget tonight," Elvis smiled. "I hope you don't remember my song." She looked surprised. "I hope you remember how it made people feel, because that's the only part that really lasts." The younger star closed her eyes and nodded, but Elvis still had one final message, not just for the young superstar, not just for the audience, but for millions watching around the world. A message that would become his greatest lesson and the perfect ending to the greatest concert of his life. The applause refused to end. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. Still, more than 90,000 people remained standing. Nobody left. Nobody checked their phones. Nobody spoke. Because everyone knew they had just witnessed something far greater than a concert. Elvis Presley looked across the endless sea of faces. Young children sat upon their fathers' shoulders. Grandparents held each other's hands. Teenagers who had arrived to watch the newest superstar now stood with tears running down their faces. The younger superstar still wore Elvis's white scarf. She looked at it, then back at Elvis. Her voice almost disappeared. "Why would you give this to me?" Elvis smiled. "Because it was never my scarf." She looked confused. He gently answered, "It always belonged to the next person who understood what music is really for." Silence. Even the television commentators couldn't speak. One quietly removed his headset. "I've called world championships, Olympic finals, royal ceremonies." He looked toward Elvis. "I've never witnessed anything like this." The younger superstar looked down, ashamed. "When I met you, I thought I was competing against you." Elvis laughed softly. "No," he shook his head. "You were competing against yourself." Another pause. The audience never asked for another Elvis. "They came here to meet you," she whispered. "But they'll always remember you." Elvis smiled warmly. "I hope they remember how I made them feel, not my name." Backstage, one young guitarist quietly asked the oldest stage technician, "How did he do it? The old man smiled. He stopped trying to impress people. He started trying to love them. The guitarist looked toward the stage. So that's the secret? The old man nodded. No amount of talent can replace a heart that truly cares. Elvis slowly walked toward the front of the stage. The younger superstar followed him, this time not behind him, beside him, exactly where he wanted her. He gently raised her hand. The audience erupted once more. She quickly tried to lower it. "No," she whispered, "this applause belongs to you." Elvis smiled. "No." He gently shook his head. "The applause becomes louder when you share it." The younger superstar began crying again. Nobody could remember the last time they had seen someone so famous refuse to stand alone. Elvis turned toward the audience. He lifted the microphone, his voice soft, gentle, almost fatherly. "When I was a little boy in Memphis, I dreamed of becoming famous." A smile crossed his face, and one day that dream came true. He paused. But dreams change. When you get older, you realize being famous isn't the greatest gift. The greatest gift is leaving someone else braver than they were before they met you. The stadium became silent again. He looked toward the younger star. "If tonight you leave trying to become the next Elvis, you'll fail." She looked up. "If you leave trying to become the greatest version of yourself, you'll inspire the next generation." The younger superstar slowly nodded. "I promise," she whispered, "I'll never forget tonight." Elvis smiled. "No, I don't want you to remember me." She looked surprised. "I want you to remember this feeling, because one day a frightened young singer will stand where you are. They'll think they aren't good enough. They'll think they don't belong. When that happens, don't remind them who you are." He smiled. Remind them who they can become. Without warning, the younger superstar stepped backward. Then, in front of more than 90,000 people, she bowed to Elvis Presley. Not for the cameras, not for television, not for headlines, for respect. Immediately, every musician placed down their instruments. Every dancer stopped moving. Every producer began applauding. Every camera operator lowered their camera. For just one moment, even security guards joined in. Then, the entire stadium rose together. The applause rolled across Wembley like thunder. It echoed beyond the stadium, beyond London, beyond England. Millions watching around the world stood inside their own homes. Some applauded, some cried, some simply smiled. Fireworks filled the night sky, golden light reflected across the white rhinestones on Elvis's jumpsuit. But almost nobody looked at the fireworks, because the brightest light wasn't above the stage. It stood at its center, holding one microphone, sharing one spotlight, teaching one generation how legends are really made. Elvis quietly looked toward the audience one final time, then smiled. The world will always need new stars. He gently placed one hand on the younger superstar's shoulder. But never forget, the brightest stars don't shine to be seen. They shine so someone else can find their way. He slowly lowered the microphone. No encore, no final song, no dramatic farewell. There didn't need to be one, because no performance could ever surpass what had already happened. Years later, people would remember the sold-out stadium, the roaring applause, the fireworks, the white jumpsuit. But those who were there always told a different story. They never said it was the greatest concert. They always said it was the night the king refused to keep the spotlight for himself. Because on that unforgettable summer evening at Wembley Stadium on Empire Way in London, England, before 90,000 people, Elvis Presley didn't prove why he was the greatest singer. He proved why he was the greatest legend. Because youth can earn applause, talent can earn fame, success can earn trophies, but only a true legend can make 90,000 strangers forget the stage, forget the lights, forget the fireworks, and remember only how their hearts felt when one man with a white jumpsuit and a single microphone reminded the world that music was never about being the loudest. It was always about making people feel less alone.